You may be seated if you'd like to be seated. Oh, I see.
The jury is coming, right? That was it.
It takes a second to line up, so.
It was extended respect for your honor. That's what it was.
That's what it feels like.
That's why I never sat down.
You may be seated. Objections or-
Sadly, Your Honor, I have no idea what the question is.
In your opinion, what concerns would a reasonably well-trained police officer have if, for example, the officers tried to create a mobile perimeter around Mr. Porter as he walked down the hill on tonight?
Can I answer?
Yes, yes.
That would be something that would be difficult to do, in my opinion, based on my being up there in that environment. Because you have to, first of all, understand that the officers are going to have to be in some proximity to the suspect based on the terrain, the hillside. Secondly, they're going to have to be eyes on, watch the subject in his hands, and at the same time maneuver their feet around the rocks and the cactus, which is very difficult. So therefore, it's not a sensible option, and in my opinion, I wouldn't do it. He can put the knives down. That's the smartest, the safest way, and the best way to ensure Mr. Boyd's safety.
How important is Mr. Boyd's safety in making the decisions that were made on that day?
It is important, very important.
And how should the officers respect Mr. Boyd's safety as they maneuver through this incident?
They should always have Mr. Boyd's safety as a consideration. It's not their first consideration. As I said, their life would come before Mr. Boyd's safety issues if he's representing an attack to them.
Now, based on your training and experience, please explain why it was appropriate to try and take Mr. Boyd into custody.
Mr. Boyd is, first of all, known to Albuquerque PD for past arrest situations and assault situations on Albuquerque police officers, and they knew that. So that's a concern. They know he's dangerous, and they know he has a history of attacking police. Then their concern is also citizen safety, and as darkness closes, that may make it more difficult for them to contain him. The rough terrain, all of that is part of a decision to stop or go.
Now, there came a point in time in which a layered, less lethal plan was implemented. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, would you please explain this concept known as a layered less lethal plan?
A layered less lethal plan is to develop a plan utilizing accepted police equipment and techniques that may have a positive resolution without the necessity for using deadly force. Less lethal tools come in a variety of different descriptions. The distraction device is a less lethal tool. The shotgun taser is a less lethal tool, and the canine is a less lethal tool. All three have some potential for injury. If the distraction device is deployed too close to someone, they can be injured, and that's happened, so you have to know how and where to deploy it. And the taser has a potential for working or not working, depending upon circumstances. Heavy clothing will reduce the ability of any taser choice. 50,000 volts of electricity, very low amperage, so they won't kill you, but it causes all of the muscle groups to knot up. So therefore, it can work, but it won't work through a heavy sweatshirt. Oftentimes, the barbs don't get there, and there's too much separation with clothing, and predictably, it may or may not work. The canine is usually very reliable, and I would put that somewhere in the plus 90% range. So the canine, and the third option, there is going to be injury with a canine application. Canines bite, and so there is severe injury, but there's no expectation of injury that would threaten life. And so the layers, in this case, were a very wise choice, because we're assuming that one may not work, and we'll opt for the other one.
In your experience, how common is it for law enforcement agencies throughout the country to use layered, less lethal responses in dealing in situations in which you might have a mentally ill person who's armed with a deadly weapon?
It's recommended in all training to have layered. Wish it would be used all the time, but it doesn't. Oftentimes departments are limited by personnel or limited by the equipment that they have, so they can't. In this case, the Albuquerque police officers had multiple choices, and then they used those multiple choices in a professional way, in my opinion.
Now, you said that it's recommended. Who recommends that officers use a layered, less lethal approach when dealing with an individual who might be mentally ill and is armed with a deadly weapon?
In my experience, there's a variety of different training programs around the country where less lethal companies that produce less lethal products provide training to law enforcement, and all of them that I'm aware of recommend multiple choices being utilized, understanding that one choice may not work. And so it's not unusual, and a multitude of different training programs do it.
Now, moving away from what the manufacturers recommend, what police organizations recommend the use of a layered, less lethal approach, layered, less lethal response when dealing with an individual who might be mentally ill and is armed with a deadly weapon?
Well, one would be the most significant, in my opinion, would be the National Tactical Officers Association. And
what is the National Tactical Officers Association?
the National Tactical Officers Association is a association that brings together the special weapons and tactics teams, members, supervisors, and incident command people for training in unusual occurrence situations, everything from riots and barricaded situations on hostage events to emotionally disturb people.
Now, what is the recommendation made by the National Tactical Officers Association with regard to the use of a layered, less lethal response?
They do recommend it if you have the equipment and you can apply it.
Now, you had an opportunity to listen to Officer Ingram testify yesterday, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you had the benefit of knowing what he had to say.
Yes.
Now, based on your review of the police report in this case and the videos and the other evidence that you reviewed, how consistent was Sergeant Ingram's testimony with regard to the decision or the plan that was involved in this case, the less lethal plan that was involved in this case?
I found it consistent.
Okay. Now, would you please explain the plan that was in place before the plan was executed on Mr. Boyd?
The plan that was in place was that they were going to utilize a noise flash diversion device, a flashbang, followed by the deployment of the shotgun taser, and followed by the deployment of the K9.
Let me stop you there and ask the court if you could switch it to the podium HDMI. And what I'm showing you, Mr. McCarthy, is what has been, what is referred to as Officer Perez Exhibit B5. And I'd like to walk you through your testimony using this video to help illustrate the less lethal, or that layered less lethal response. Now, as this video unfolds, do you see an officer whose arm is moving?
Yes.
Now, based on your training experience, what is it you're seeing?
I can't be sure.
Okay.
Oh, now I'm seeing a item being thrown.
Now, based on your review of the information in this case, the videos and the police reports, what did you learn was thrown?
What did I learn?
What did you learn that was thrown?
A distraction device.
Now, how much experience have you had deploying distraction devices?
Quite a bit, sir.
When you say quite a bit, are you able to provide this jury with a number with regards to your personal deployment of distraction devices?
Thousands.
Thousands?
Of times.
And what kind of training have you had on the deployment of noise flash diversionary devices?
I was trained as a police user of them. We call it a police operator with it, but a police user, how to use them. And then I was trained to be a police trainer and train police officers in their use. And that's why I've used so many, because as a police trainer, over the years, with a class of 30 or 40 officers, we deploy a lot of distraction devices. So.
In your work as a police officer and police supervisor, how many times have you seen noise flash diversionary devices used in real-world situations?
Many times. We used to make them ourselves originally in the Los Angeles Police Department, and because no manufacturer made them at the time, but the concept was there. And then manufacturers realized that that was an opportunity to sell things, so they started making them. And now they're made by several companies.
What has been your experience with regard to the effectiveness of the use of a noise flash diversionary device on individuals who are essentially the targets of that device?
About 70% of the time when they're used, and it's an environment where there are people involved, citizens involved, they go to the ground. They instinctively go to the ground, and that's about 70% of the time you'll find that. Some go to the ground and then get up and run to a different location. Others will be on the ground and you have to help them up because it actually created that much emotional disturbance, and you have to help them up and have them sit on the couch or something and relax if it's been used inside.
If effective, how does a noise flash diversionary device affect the person who is the target of that device?
Well, there's a bright flash, and it's about 6 to 8 million candle power. So it will literally, if you're looking at it, you will lose your ability to see very well, and maybe lose it completely for a few seconds, and that will last for about 30 seconds, and slowly you'll get your vision back. It will not hurt you unless you're an infant. Distraction devices can't be used if we know that there's anybody under the age of 3 years old. There's a pressure wave, about 0.63 pounds per square foot of pressure wave, which you actually feel, and since we're 90% liquid, our bodies, that pressure wave hits our outer body, and we'll feel that pressure wave, which can cause some disturbance because people don't know exactly what that is. And then there's the sound.
Before you go on to the sound, let me ask, how does, in your experience, how does that pressure wave feel?
It feels, it doesn't hurt. It's just something most people haven't felt before unless they're around detonations of some kind. And so it's something that causes them some disturbance and surprise because they're not familiar with it. And then you've got the decibel level.
What is the decibel level of a noise flash diversionary device?
The decibel level is about 174 to 178 decibels, which is supposed to be non-injurious to adults. And again, we don't use them around 3 years of age and under because that can be harmful to a child's ears.
In your experience, what effect does this...
Sorry, this is either a fire drill or a fire alarm, and we're going to have to ask you to vacate the building. Sherry will escort the jury out. And when they clear us to come back into the building, we'll review.